Happy Friday, wine lovers! It's Stephanie Miskew, certified sommelier and author of the blog, The Glamorous Gourmet. And welcome to my weekly Facebook Live show, Wines of the Week. And I'm here every Friday at 5 o'clock with you to kick off happy hour and share some fabulous wines you won't want to miss. And on today's tasting, on this fabulous Friday, November 3rd, our theme is Homage to Fromage. And we're going to be talking about some delicious wine and cheese pairings that are just fabulous. And I don't know about you, but as soon as fall rolls around, I crave wine and cheese. I don't know what it is, but I crave it. It's so hearty and comforting. I mean, what's not to love, frankly? And also, since down here in South Florida, we are also kicking off entertaining season, and the wine and cheese party is my secret entertaining weapon. Why slave over a hot stove and an elaborate dinner party? Just set out some thoughtfully paired wines and cheeses for your guests, and then you get to enjoy the party along with them. And you look like the host or hostess with the mostest, because you're having fun. And you're not only having fun, but you're introducing folks to beautiful pairings that they might not have tasted before. It's just really a win-win for everybody. And it's just so much fun. And thanks so much for joining me today. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. If you could just tell me before we jump in, I'd love to hear from you. If you can hear my voice out there, and let me know in the comment section where you're watching from, or if you have something in your glass already, which I hope you do, let me know what that is. I'm nosy like that, and I just like to know. Or you can just throw up an emoji or two just to let me know you can hear me, and that will be good enough. And while you're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and just pull up our video here. And I also like to share our super simple format with you before we get started. It's the same format every week. And there we go. Same format every week. At 5 o'clock, I taste through 4 wines that I share with you. And at any point during the tasting, you can comment or ask questions. And it's so fun to keep it interactive. That's the beauty of the whole Facebook Live thing, right? I like to keep each tasting to about 30 to 40 minutes. I know it's Friday. I know it's happy hour. And I know you've all got places to go and people to see. So, you know, it's just a great way to kind of get you in the weekend mode, and, you know, hopefully you can enjoy some wine along with me. Also, if you're watching this video after the live broadcast, please go ahead and comment and ask questions as if you were watching it live, because I monitor these for weeks afterwards, and I'd be happy to respond to your questions or comments. So please go ahead and do that. I think I met some of you last week that way, and it's just a good thing. Also, on the left-hand side of your screen, you'll see a little button that says Join My List. And that is essentially just signing up for my weekly newsletter that you get it once a week. And it's full of great food and wine advice and recipes and pairings. And it also has all the latest info on my upcoming events and TV appearances and projects that I'm working on, and I have some really exciting things to announce to you all in the next couple months. So I promise you won't hear from me more than once a week, no spam, and I'd really appreciate it if you did that. So again, let me know in the comment section where you're watching from or what you're drinking, or just give me some of those emojis, and I say, let's dive into our tasting. All right. And again, today we're talking homage to fromage. We're talking all about wine and cheese today. I know, that just automatically puts a smile on my face. All right. So our first wine we're going to try today is the Miskew Red Puy-Fumé La Moinerie from the Loire Valley in France. And I know that's kind of a mouthful, but you'll see why it's so incredibly worth it as we proceed. This wine, it's a white wine. It's a 2011 vintage. And we're going to get to why that's remarkable, because that's from a little while ago. And our first 2 wines are actually our splurges today, because each week I feature steals and splurges, but our first 2 wines are our splurges. And I'm calling this a splurge at $30 a bottle, but totally worth it. No matter what the price, the wines I bring to you are all great values for what they are. They always, those expensive wines have great quality. So again, let me show you the bottle, and let me flip that screen so you can see it. There you go. Beautiful label. Again, it's the La Moinerie Puy-Fumé 2011 vintage from Michel Red. Now, it was founded by Michel Red, but today his son Thierry and his sons are running the winery. They are they're the 13th and 14th generation of the family. The estate dates back to 1630. Like, that's amazing. Yeah, it's great how they kept things in the family, and they have hundreds and hundreds of years of experience over there in France and Italy. Really, really great. The wine in my glass is 100% from estate-grown fruit, sourced specifically from the family's La Moinerie vineyard. So we have a beautiful single vineyard wine, but you might be thinking, or maybe you're not. I'd love to know if you've ever had a Puy-Fumé before, because whenever you see a glass of white wine from the Loire Valley and it says Puy-Fumé or Sancerre on that label, that wine is 100% Sauvignon Blanc. So if you are a Sauvignon Blanc lover, and you might enjoy Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand or California, then you definitely need to try these wines as well. They are exceptional. And it really kind of just rounds out your own knowledge and experience of what the Sauvignon Blanc grape can do. So again, just a beautiful wine. Also, white Bordeaux was also made from the Sauvignon Blanc grape too. In that case, it's usually blended with a grape called Semillon, but those are gorgeous white wines as well. So just something to keep in mind. And for those of you joining me for the first time, I do a guided tasting of each wine, and I follow the 6 S's, which are see, swirl, sniff, sip, swish, and savor. Usually when I'm professionally evaluating a wine, we always spit the wine out, but I'm going to savor because it's Friday. So let's go ahead and jump into our first S, which is C. And you can see this wine is just a beautiful color. Pale lemon yellow, translucent, no browning at all. And it is a 2011 vintage. This is one of my favorite wines. I didn't think I had any left. And then I came across this bottle, and it's one of my favorites to do cheese pairings with. So I'm like, please let it be good. I thought it would be good because these wines have such beautiful acidity. Acidity is like Botox for wine. It preserves it indefinitely. And this wine is every bit as beautiful as the ones that I opened a few years ago. It's just gorgeous. So it looks beautiful, and I'm gonna go ahead and roll into swirl and then sniff. And we swirl the wine to really turn the volume up on the aromas so we can get a better sense of what the wine is about. Gosh, and immediately on the nose, you get beautiful minerals, limestone, citrus, and almost like a saline quality to the wine. God, it's just beautiful. So now I'm going to go ahead and move along to sip and swish. And when I say swish, I just mean to swish the wine kind of around your whole mouth, so it really hits all the areas of your palate and your cheeks and all that jazz. Yeah, and immediately, Sauvignon Blanc from the Loire is just so beautifully acidic, lively acidity. Again, it's got a beautiful tartness to it. It's all citrus and minerals and lemon zest and white peach with a hint of guava on the finish. As it kind of goes down, you get a beautiful guava note, but I mean, it is just bright and beautiful. And again, this wine, 2011 vintage, but because it has that beautiful acidity, that preserves the wine, and it's just gorgeous, gorgeous wine. And I'm using this wine, and I'm also going to share with you some pairing principles. So this way you can kind of take these principles and create your own wine pairings at home. Or you can just stick with the ones I show you today. But when you're using the principles, you can kind of create your own, because we all have slightly different tastes. I mean, that's just the way it goes. Actually, hold on one second. I just want to make sure. Awesome. Okay. So the pairing principle is pair wine and cheeses with similar flavors. So the wine that I've chosen to pair with, the cheese I've chosen to pair with this wine is a fresh goat cheese, also known as chèvre. It's made from fresh goat's milk cheese, which originated in France thousands of years ago, of course. Fresh goat cheese has a higher moisture content than hard cheese because it's not aged. So all the moisture stays in the cheese. And goat's milk cheeses are actually lower in fat, lower in calories, and they're easier to digest for people who might have like lactose intolerance. Goat's milk is a great thing. And this cheese is naturally high in acidity, and it has a beautiful tangy quality. It really mirrors the flavor profile of the wine. So you get this beautiful synergy that's essentially 1 + 1 = 3. And that's the goal when you're talking about pairing wine and food, wine and cheese. You want the two things together to be better than either one is apart. And I actually have some goat cheese right here that I'm gonna take a little taste of while I'm talking with you. And then take a little sip of the wine. Yeah. And I'm telling you, this is one of those pairings, if I'm ever doing a live event and tasting along with people, it just kind of like, you see that light bulb moment happen, because the synergy between a Sauvignon Blanc and goat cheese, the fresh goat cheese, is just unbelievable. And hey, Deb, I see Deb's chiming in and saying hello. Great to see you, lady. Thanks for joining us today. And anyone else, is anyone else out there a fan of goat cheese or Sauvignon Blanc? Or have you ever tried the two together? Because man, that is just spectacular. Yeah, and then the wine just, again, cleanses the cheese from your palate, and you're ready for another bite. But again, I won't eat the whole thing while you're sitting here with me. So again, that was the pairing principle: pair wine and cheese with similar flavors. Again, you get that flavor synergy, and it just creates a beautiful experience for you or your guests. Okay, so let's move on to our next wine, which is, let me pour myself some first. Okay, and this wine, I'm here to tell you, oh good, Deb's drinking a Puy Fusé, fabulous. And I forgot to mention that it's important not to confuse Puy Fumé, which is Sauvignon Blanc from the Loire Valley, with Puy Fusé, which is Chardonnay from Burgundy. So they're very different wines. They're both fabulous wines, but very different wines. So keep that in mind. All right, so let me show you the label. Or actually, Jennifer has a question. Let me get to that first before we dive in. Jen says, what if you are serving grapes along with the wine and your cheese? Do you match red grapes with red wines, etc.? That is a great question. I would bring the grapes in more as like an in-between pairings, like you might try the wine and the cheese, and then maybe to cleanse your palate, because grapes have a little bit of sweetness to them. So I would kind of eat them maybe between pairings to maybe cleanse your palate a little bit. That's kind of how I would incorporate the grapes into the pairing. Because honestly, when you're pairing wine and cheese, it's best to keep things as simple as possible. Strangely enough, it's the simple pairings that have the most impact, I find. Sometimes when I work with chefs, they'll want to throw 10 different ingredients on a dish that's going to pair with a particular wine. But it's like, nope, keep it as simple as possible to get the most effect. So I hope that helps. But I love all the little doodads you put on the tray along with the cheese. I mean, that's what keeps it fun, and it has such great texture. And I think those things are really important for when you're hosting a wine and cheese tasting party. So definitely put your grapes out. And gosh, there's all kinds of other fun stuff to put out. I'll get into some of that as we go on. But all right, so back to this wine, our second wine of our tasting. And I have such a crush on this wine. This is from Hartford Court. It's their Seascape Vineyard Sonoma Coast Chardonnay. It's a 2013 vintage. You can see they're just a beautiful label, beautiful wine. And again, just, I love it. So this wine is a splurge. It's a splurge at about $65 to $70 a bottle, But let me tell you, I think, in my opinion, it's really worth every penny. Hartford Family Winery was founded in 1994 by Don and Jennifer Hartford. It's located in Sonoma County, just 15 miles from the coast. So these vineyards are cooled by the fog coming in and the breezes coming in off the Pacific Ocean. This vineyard in particular is one of the coldest vineyards in Sonoma because of its proximity to the ocean. But that's what makes it produce such beautiful fruit. And winemaker Jeff Stewart is just phenomenal. What he does beautiful Pinot Noir, Chardonnays, and even Zinfandels. And he makes them all from these vineyards that are usually very hard to get to. They're very hard to access, but their tenet of winemaking is that, let me see, character through adversity. So these vines kind of have to struggle a bit. They're not in the best locations, and well, they are for winemaking, but they're not easily accessible. And it's a little challenging, the whole viticultural aspect of it. But these wines develop tremendous personality and character through, facing a little bit of adversity. And he makes all of his wines are single vineyard wines, and he makes about 25 different ones, and they're all such small production wines. Last year I did a dinner event with these wines, and man, I had to scramble to get enough, because depending on the wine, he only makes about 93 to 800 cases per wine. So when you compare that to something like your Santa Margarita Pinot Grigio, where it's like 400,000 cases are made, and here you're talking 93 to 800 cases. I mean, it's tiny. They're small production, but they're some of the most beautiful wines, Chardonnays and Pinot Noirs, and even Zinfandels you'll ever try. And just beautiful. So the Seascape Vineyard itself sits on a beautiful high ridge top in the Sonoma Coast AVA. Again, there's no buffer between it and the ocean, so the breeze comes right in, and it's very, very cold. So they have to wait until about October or November to harvest the Chardonnay grapes, which is a long time to wait. But the end result is a wine with beautiful complexity and beautiful aromas and flavors. And again, I love it. Can you tell? So let's go ahead, and we're going to roll into our tasting of the wine. Oh, and Deb says, my hair looks awesome. Thank you, Deb. It's the pink that's left over from last week's Halloween tasting. So I'm just going to wait it out. I'm not hating it, but thank you. That helps. All right, so let's go ahead, and we're going to look at the wine first, because C is our first S. And you can see this wine is much richer and deeper in color. I'm going to hide my Band-Aid finger there. It's much deeper golden color, whereas the last one was more of a pale lemon yellow. This is a rich golden color wine. And that's because of the grape. It's because a little bit of oak was used on this wine. That all makes for a deeper colored white wine. So let's go ahead, and we're going to swirl and sniff. Oh, and that is just, I want to dab it behind my ears. That's just heavenly, heavenly aromas of baked apple and citrus and spice. It's very aromatic when I compare it to our last wine, which was more reticent and more mineral driven. This is more spice and fruit driven for sure. But you can even see as I'm swirling it, this wine has more of a viscosity to it than our previous wine did, which was fermented in stainless steel. I don't know if you can get that really, but the way you can see it even has legs that kind of are going down the sides of the glass. So now it's time for sip and swish. Yeah, hashtag winegasm. Compared to the first wine, so different. This is pretty much the opposite of our first wine, and they're both beautiful wines. They're just very different. This wine coats the palate with that beautiful viscous body that it has. It's got beautiful, beautiful mouthfeel, spiced apple and pear. Definitely, yeah, spiced pear. There was a candle I was in love with years ago that was called Spiced Pear, and this is kind of reminiscent of that in the best possible way. Citrus and ginger and that toasty oak. You get the baking spices imparted from the French oak used to make this wine. And again, it's just a beautiful, beautiful Chardonnay. Pricey, but worth it. If you're a Chardonnay lover, sometimes it's fun to venture out, you know, and try these pricier wines. And again, such a special single vineyard wine. I think you would really enjoy it. So the pairing principle that I'm going to share with you to go with this wine is pair wine and cheese with similar weight. Same thing when you're pairing wine and food. You want to match the weight of the wine to the weight of the food so neither one blows the other one out of the water. So to pair with this wine, we're talking a more fuller bodied white. It's very aromatic. It has a lot of complex flavors, and again, that viscous, beautiful mouthfeel. So I have chosen to pair it with a triple cream brie. Now, who doesn't like brie? Brie is a soft ripened, bloomy rind cow's milk cheese. It was dubbed the Queen of Cheeses at the Congress of Vienna in the 1800s, and it still remains one of the most popular cheeses to date. And why not? It's delicious. Do any of you out there like brie? If so, show me some brie love. I mean, it's just delicious. It's made, actually, the edible mold around the, I love it, thanks. The mold around the outside is made using an edible mold, so you can go ahead and eat the mold on the outside of a brie rind. Have at it. You don't have to pick it off. And in a social situation, that's awkward sometimes. You're sitting there trying to have a conversation and pick the rind off the brie. So just go ahead and eat it, but I think it will be a great pairing with our Chardonnay. So I'm going to cut myself a little piece right here. I didn't want to get the whole cracker involved and have you guys wait for me to deal with that, but again. And again, it's that even, equal match. And again, 1 + 1 = 3, my friends. That is just phenomenal. And you could recreate that with your favorite Chardonnay. I would recommend doing it with an oaked version of a Chardonnay. I wouldn't go with a stainless steel fermented. You have to have like that body and that voluptuousness, but that is heavenly. Now, on the flip side, you can also pair contrasting flavors in wine. So I've also paired brie in the past with sparkling wine, which has a bright, crisp acidity. You know, it's very lean. And when you pair that with a rich, luscious brie, you get this beautiful contrast. So again, it just depends on the types of flavors you like. But, you know, if you're not such a Chardonnay fan, you might want to try a beautiful, crisp, lively, bubbly with the brie as well. And again, when you have a bite of brie, the little bubbles in the champagne or sparkling wine act as little scrubbing bubbles, and they scrub your palate clean. And so that's a really neat way to go too. But this is quite heavenly, I have to tell you. So let me have another sip. Any questions about any of the wines or cheeses so far? I'd be happy to answer that to you right after I take another sip of wine. And let me just see. Awesome. Is anyone else out there drinking it? Do you guys have anything in your glass yet other than Deb, who was so kind to share with us what she's drinking? Or do you have plans to drink anything special later tonight? If so, you better tell. Okay. Da-da-da-da. All right, so let's move on to our reds. I always have to pour myself some first. So here we go. So our first red wine of the tasting is, let's see, over here. All right, it's a, oh, did I do that right? No, because that's backwards. All right, the Castello di Albola Chianti Classico, obviously from Tuscany in Italy, 2013 vintage. And our next two wines, our two reds of this tasting, are total steals. This one is $18 a bottle, my friends. And it is so delicious. It's such a shame that Chianti gets a bad rap, because these are some of, I mean, that's where I fell in love with wine, was in Tuscany. And these are some of the best food wines on the planet, hands down. So next time you're shopping for wine, seek out a nice little Chianti Classico or Chianti Classico Reserva and just pair it with a nice dish of pasta or some other beautiful Italian dish and go to town and enjoy it. Because of all wines on the planet, because I know a lot of people have tried Italian wines on their own, not with food, but Italian wines really come alive when you add food to the mix. That is the biggest change. Some people will try these wines because they're very high in acidity and they have some tannin to them, but the minute you add food, it's like magic happens. So this wine, again, as I mentioned, the winery is located in the hills of Tuscany. Have any of you ever visited any wine regions in Italy or Tuscany? Let me know. As I said, that's where I fell in love with wine. I came back, and from the minute I came back, I made wine my career. I started getting credentials and worked for it so inspired me. So I feel very strongly about the region, obviously. Oh, let's see. Oh, Jean chimed in. Cheers, lady. Jean says, oh, you're so cute too. Just poured a glass of Chardonnay to join you. Cheers, lady. Thanks so much for joining. Okay, so the wine in the glass, it's Chianti Classico DOCG, which is the most rigorous classification in Italy. And unlike the regions in California, when you have a wine that's classified over in Europe, or this wine in particular, there's very stringent criteria that the winemakers have to adhere to regarding which grapes are used to make the wine, when the grapes are harvested, how many like the yield. All of that is dictated by law, and you can't deviate from that. So that's essentially how Super Tuscans came to be, but I'll get to that in another tasting. So this is, again, a classic Chianti Classico. It's a blend of 95% Sangiovese, which is the signature grape of Tuscany. You'll find it in pretty much most wines that you enjoy in Tuscany are Sangiovese, and there's 5% Caniolo thrown in as well. I learned that from Kevin Zraeli, one of the best wine teachers in the world, but I always chuckle when I do that because I think of him. So again, just a beautiful wine, and let's go ahead and roll right into our tasting. And you'll see this wine is got a beautiful garnet, kind of garnet red color, maybe with a little purple going on in there as well. It's a little translucent. It's not totally opaque like we would expect like a Cab or a Malbec to be. So again, you can see through this wine a little bit. It's not completely opaque. It's 13% alcohol, so it's nothing crazy. For sure. And so now it looks like I would expect it to look. There's no browning. There's nothing floating in it. It looks just like I like it to look. All right, so now I'm going to do swirl and sniff. Oh, and that is just heaven. There's red fruit. God, red fruit, earth, and spice, and a little like savory herb thing going on. That's just, oh, it's delicious. It's very nice. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and sip and swish. Yeah, and immediately you notice one of the hallmark flavors of Chianti, wines from Chianti, oh, I love to see hearts go by, is a specific type of cherry called Morello cherry. They're grown in Italy, but it's essentially sour cherry. And it's just, oh, it's beautiful. This one has it along with a little bit of plum, some beautiful earth, some spice. Let's see, a little bit of raspberry, and even like I got a little hint of violet on this wine too. I mean, for an $18 bottle of wine, there's a lot going on in this glass. It's fantastic. So the pairing principle we're going to use for this wine and cheese pairing is, there's two actually. You pair the texture of the wine and cheese, and what grows together goes together. And I especially love the grows together goes together thing, because whenever you are stuck for a pairing or you're frozen up and you don't know which wines or which cheeses to get, just think like if you have a wine, like an Italian wine, just pick an Italian cheese from the same region the wine is from. These people have been working this out for centuries, so they've already got it all figured out. You don't need to rethink what they already know. And believe me, they know what they're doing. So whether it's a French wine or an Italian wine, go with the cheese that's from the region. And although the cheese that I'm featuring today isn't exactly from that region, it's from Northeast Italy. I'm pairing this with a Parmigiano Reggiano. It's close enough, and it's a brilliant pairing for this wine, which brings me to what I said before, pair the texture of the cheese and the wine. You've got this beautiful wine with acid and tannin, and when you're talking about a nice chunk of Parmigiano Reggiano, as you know, for those of you who have had it before, it has that beautiful, it has the crystals in it because it's aged for so long. And again, it's a Italian cow's milk cheese named after Parma and Reggio, the regions where it's made. and it's aged for 24 months. So this is what happens when you let the moisture evaporate from cheese. Like our first fresh cheese, this is what happens after 24 months. You get this deliciousness with its nutty aromas and flavors. And again, the crystals and the textures just go so well with the tannins in the wine. I love it so much, I'm going to go ahead and have some. Anyone else out there a fan of Parmigiano Reggiano? We always have this in our fridge. Always. And again, 1 + 1 = 3, people. And I'd love to take credit for this, but like I said, this has been worked out long before I came to town. You stick with the basics, and again, keep it basic, and that will give you the most impact and the most reward, I promise. It doesn't have to get complicated at all. Man, that's good. Any questions about anything so far? Deb says, I'm a mouse. I love cheese. Cheers to you, my friend. I am too. I can't get enough. Well, I think us estrogen Americans are automatically predisposed to, like, I think cheese and chocolate. That's my belief anyway. I don't know. I don't see my husband getting it quite as passionate about wine and cheese as I do, but oh well, more for me, right? Oh, and Jean, I'm so glad you brought that cheese up. Jean Tiernan, who you can see on the conversation, introduced me, along with Janet Langford, introduced me to this amazing cheese. It's a blend of Gouda and Parmigiano Reggiano. It's called Prima Donna. Seek it out, my friends. It is probably the best, like one of my top 2 favorite cheeses in the world, for sure. That would be a brilliant pairing with this wine or any red, full-bodied red wine. That is such a good, I'm so glad you brought that up, because I was thinking about that. But I don't know if everyone has access to it, but if you do, check into the Prima Donna, my friends. It is delicious. Oops. All right. So now we are going to move on to our 4th and final wine and cheese pairing. I think I'm doing pretty good. I know you guys all have plans, so I appreciate you having a little warm-up wine and cheese little pairing party here with me before you're headed out for the night. Oh, let's see. I think we got another question. Oh, Deb says, I love Gouda. I thought Jean was calling me a prima donna. Maybe she was. No, I'm kidding. No, but honestly, for us prima donnas, it's even better. It's a delicious cheese. I wish I had some here with me now. Awesome. Okay. So, oh, I forgot to get the bottle. Let's see. All right. So our 4th and final wine of our tasting comes to us from Spain. Let's see. It is our Bodegas Muga Rioja. It is unfiltered, and we'll get to that in a minute. It's from the Rioja region of Spain, 2011 vintage. Again, it's a steal at $15 a bottle. And do any of you out there already like Spanish wines? Because if you're open to trying new things, Spain is a region that is just full of tremendous value. I mean, the amazing quality of the wines for the price is just, it's amazing. We so should be drinking more Spanish wine here in the States. And I always, when I have the chance, I love to, because they're again, great food wines, right? These people, they know what they're doing. So this particular winery, Bodegas Muga, is located in the Rioja Alta region of Spain. And it was established in 1932. So not as long as our Sancerre, but still, that's a long time. They grow classic Spanish grapes such as Tempranillo, Garnacha, Mazuelo, Malvasia, and Viura. We don't hear about those grapes often in the States, unfortunately. We should embrace Spanish wines more. This wine that we're going to be tasting today is a blend of 70% Tempranillo, 20% Garnacha, 7% Mazuelo, and 3% Graciano, aged for 24 months in American oak barrels. And I know I talk a lot about French oak, but American oak plays a really important role, especially in 2 key grapes, Tempranillo and Zinfandel. For some reason, these grapes just do particularly well and have a great affinity for American oak. So if you've ever opened a Rioja wine or a Zinfandel, and if you've ever smelled aromas of either Dill pickle or coconut or sweet vanilla, those are actually imparted to the wine by the American oak. French oak gives spice and vanilla, so you get baking spices, clove, nutmeg, and a little bit of more of a baking vanilla. But American oak, imparts vanilla, a little bit of sweet vanilla, dill pickle, and coconut to a finished wine. So it's really interesting when you find out how all this works and how these amazing winemakers put it all together. So let's go ahead and dive into our tasting. And you can see, this wine is true garnet. There's not too much purple going on, and it's a little older, and that could be why. 2011, not too old, but also the grape is probably why. That's just a beautiful garnet. Again, this wine is opaque. This is a percentage higher than our last red. It's 14% alcohol. It's pretty opaque. The core is opaque, and when you get out to the rim, it lightens up a little bit, but not much. So again, but it looks like it should look. There's no browning around the edges, which would indicate either it's really aged or maybe oxidized, and there's nothing floating in it, which is always good. But it's not always bad when you see sediment in a wine either. And we're going to get to that at some point. But anyway, all right, so now I'm rolling into swirl and sniff. Oh, and that is just beautiful. It's got beautiful aromas of red fruit, leather, definitely a beautiful leather component. I love leather in a wine, in a red wine, leather and earth, and a little bit, I swear there's just a little bit hint of coconut in that, ever so slightly, and in the best possible way. That would be a little bit of a tip off to the American oak thing. All right, so now sip and swish. Yeah, and that is just beautiful. Lovely tannins. It's got a bright acidity, not as strong an acidity as our Chianti, but still a lovely food-friendly acidity. Very fine, the tannins are very moderate. So if you're not a huge fan of tannins, like big tannins, and the tannins mellow out as the wine ages a little bit too. So this wine, the tannins are nicely integrated, and beautiful flavors of red cherry and pomegranate. And again, that beautiful leathery earth thing going on. That's so nice. And it's also a nice minerality too to this wine, which is lovely, which whenever I detect those components in a wine, especially with a nice acidity, that immediately makes me think of pairing food with the wine. Because sometimes when wines are too fruity, you don't even want to pair food with them. They're almost like a meal in and of themselves when they're too fruity. But when you have those beautiful textural components of acid and tannin, adding the right food can just make that wine. So the pairing principle I'm sharing with you, actually it's two, because this is also, if it grows together, it goes together, because I'm pairing it with a Manchego cheese, but also pair hard cheeses with red wines. So you see we paired our two first cheeses, the fresh goat's milk cheese and the soft ripened brie, with white wines. You want to pair hard cheeses with red wines because they have a different texture, and they can really stand up to the tannins and acid in a red wine. So Manchego is a hard sheep's milk cheese from the La Mancha region of Spain. You can really know it by this crosshatch on the rind. That's typical Manchego, and kind of how it's actually formed because back in the day they used to actually age the cheese in mats woven from grass, but now it's just, I think they do it by machine. But in any event, it's a nice touch. But like when I was shopping for it, I saw the back of the cheese, I'm like, that's the Manchego. But let's see. Yeah, it has a firm, compact texture and characteristic briny, nutty aroma and slightly sharp, intense flavor that becomes slightly piquant when well ripened. But again, just a beautiful cheese. And again, if it grows together, it goes together, is our Manchego. So I'm going to go ahead and have a bite. Anyone have any questions about anything so far? You guys are going, oh, rack of lamb. Hello. Jean, you're like reading my mind today, or you're speaking to me today. Jean is a queen of rack of lamb, my friends. Oh my God. That would be perfect with this. Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, love coconut. Yes. You too love coconut. Jean also makes the best coconut ice cream too. Oh, I'm so glad. Oh, sorry, what's the name? The name of this wine is the Bodegas Muga Rioja. It's unfiltered. I will link out to the post on my blog that has all the information along with pricing. And our first wine was a beautiful Michel Red Puy Fumé. So I'll put that in the notes for sure, Deb. Absolutely. Let me have another sip. Yeah, I mean, that is just, again, and you know, each pairing principle isn't mutually exclusive. Like, you can overlap. You know, like that one, I mean, match the weight of the wine and the cheese is also, that's a beautiful example of that as well. If it grows together, it goes together. But yeah, pair hard cheeses with red wine and pair softer cheeses with white. That's a good guide to use as well. Gosh, I'm telling you, this is one of my favorite, favorite shows so far. So are there any questions about anything so far, my friends? And if not, I'd like to thank you so much for tuning in today. It's always fun, and I can't think of a better way to kick off the weekend. And like I said, I can't thank you enough for joining me today. Also, as I mentioned before, if you want to sign up for my weekly newsletter, just click on the Join My List button in the left-hand side of your screen. And I have lots of announcements coming up in the next 2 months, so I would really, really appreciate that. And feel free to spread the word to your friends, your wine-loving friends. Invite them. It's always the more the merrier here on Wines of the Week. I would so appreciate that. And I hope you can join me next Friday, November 10th, when we're going to talk about getting out of the wine rut and why a little Venus promiscuity is a good thing. When it comes to wine, variety is the spice of life. So I'm going to be featuring 4 fabulous wines that are going to lure you right out of that wine rut that you've been in, and just encourage you to drink different things and introduce you to some fun new wines. So if that is all, my friends, I will leave you to go to happy hour. Thank you so much for joining me. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me, and I wish you a great weekend, and I look forward to seeing you next week, Friday at 5 o'clock, for more Wines of the Week. Cheers!